I've learned that for me, wealth is time and freedom, because I think at the end of the day, we all do this ultimately to be able to impact the lives of our loved ones or our kids.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Lindsay, I'm so glad we're getting an opportunity to have a conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm great. So really, really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. It is my pleasure. Well, with all my guests, I like them to just introduce themselves and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name's Lindsay Lovell. I'm joining you today from the San Francisco Bay Area. I am a real estate investor. I started off with my own business, purchasing small to single family residential homes. I've expanded into having a short term and long term management company, as well as G6 Capital, a syndication company that we've done funds both focused around short term rentals, and we are now pivoting to long term rentals. So a little bit of variety over the past almost 3.5 years now since I started.
Oh, wow. That's not much time then to build up everything that you just mentioned.
It's
That's
it's
cool.
it's been a fast and furious ride. Once I got the real estate bug, I was all in.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it sounds like it. What did you do before you got bit by the real estate bug?
Yeah, so I had never thought that entrepreneurial ways were in me. I had, bought the hook, line, and sinker, the American dream of get good grades, work hard, you'll be able to have it all. And so I, valedictorian, top of my class in college, graduated, got the dream job in finance and consulting, and found myself getting more and more in debt. Went back to business school to see if maybe there was a different corporate job out there that would bring some happiness. Racked up some more student loans, came out, got a slight pay raise, and was just as unhappy. I was doing medical education where I was calling on different cancer clinics when COVID hit. And I was very blessed to be still getting a paycheck, but until we learned how to pivot as an industry, I couldn't go out and see customers, which
Mm.
makes sense during a global pandemic and cancer patients. So I started listening to different podcasts, joined the Bigger Pockets community, and went ahead and found a mentor. Bought my first home, and let's see, that was July of 2020, and away I went. So I sort of fell into it, just looking for a way to occupy my time, and then realized as soon as I got into it, it was a way to escape that 9 to 5 rat race.
Yeah, talk about your mindset around having to make the jump from the corporate world and going off into this real estate adventure.
Yeah.
Were there any fears around there, hesitations? What was
Yeah.
going on in your mind?
Well, I should definitely say, so, my biggest advice is keep your W-2, right? For as long as you can, to many people, and which is what I did, because it was a nice safety net. Now I had the flexibility and time to be able to manage both till I got to the point that now if I work, it's because I want to work, right? And because I enjoy what I'm doing, not because I have to. It's definitely scary. I think run your numbers conservatively, have a very, very good understanding of what your monthly spend is, and add a lot more to that. Have a good, for me, I'm very conservative. Like I mentioned, I never thought I would be going into entrepreneurialism. So also have some reserves. So for me, just make sure you set yourself up. At least that was my mindset, so that I could really focus and not be stressed about making that leap.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to be there. From your story, what are some small steps that you took that had big results?
So I think finding a community, finding a mentor, right? There's so much information out there. And yes, you can do everything on your own and you can do everything for free. You may not realize that it's costing you time, and maybe in the long run, actually going to have a monetary impact because of the lessons you learn the hard
Mm,
way.
it's
So,
true.
yeah, I joined a mastermind that I think was $200 a month. And even though as I progressed, it was more a mastermind for beginners, I still found it so valuable no matter how far along I was in my journey, because there's always things that you don't know. Even
Mhm.
being so experienced, there's always new trends or financing or things that, it's just forever an area to be able to grow in. And
Hmm.
so that was one of the baby steps that I took at first. And then again, resources like podcasts like this. Listen, I constantly had my earbuds in my ears, just listening and absorbing, drying my hair, doing the laundry, driving, walking the dog. Because I think, at first it kind of sounds like Mandarin. You hear them talking about this BRRRR, what the heck is a burr and what do all those stand for? And it feels daunting. But the more you just kind of sit back and let yourself kind of let it wash over you, you'll start to absorb it without even realizing it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, though, all they get to is just the listening stage. What helped you go from the listening stage into action?
Yeah. So I like to say set an action line instead of a deadline because deadline seems so morbid. So for me, it was one of those where you hear everybody say analysis paralysis and you meet so many people that are like, oh, yeah, I've been looking and doing my research for a year or two. And I think it's so often we look at people and we say, I want to be them. And it can be so daunting. But in ways, it was also easier to say, I don't want to be them. Right. I don't want to be the person that's still hanging out in the chat rooms a year from now that hasn't taken action. So for
Mhm.
me, what I did again, being very risk adverse, I sat down and I said, okay, here's how much money I can put into this. And it's not going to put us on the streets. I'm not going to, be living back at home with my parents if everything goes sideways and I completely lose it. So I sat down and I set a very clear, concise number. And I said, I am going to buy, in 8 weeks from now, I'd already been doing some research and everything. I have a mentor. He's helping me out. I am going to take action and I'm going to know that I'm going to be okay, even if this doesn't work. But now's the time. And if I don't do it, and I was also excited after having seen what it's done for other people. I think we often focus on the negatives and we let that
Yeah.
outweigh the positives. And everybody that you listen to, I'm not a rocket scientist. There's nothing special about me, right? There's no reason that I was successful that your listeners can't be successful. The only difference is I took action.
Yeah. Well, that's the biggest part, isn't it? The
Yeah.
taking the action part. For you personally, what were one or two fears that you had to put aside and in the end they I'm guessing they weren't real anyway?
Just, that I was going to get cheated out of, I'm in the Bay Area. So, my properties weren't anywhere near where I live. So I was doing it long distance. So this idea that, it's impossible to buy a house sight unseen, right? And just getting over that fear and belief that, it's one that you have to walk and see and feel. When you're buying an investment, it's numbers, right? You don't need the kitchen to make you feel warm and fuzzy. A place you're going to live in, yes, but as a landlord for a rental, you need to be clean, safe, and the numbers to make sense. So I think that was something that I had to learn to get over. And the fear of relying on other people, right? And trusting. We're so used to, especially I mentioned I was that, straight A student, did everything. It felt like cheating saying, I'm going to have a property manager and a rockstar real estate agent that I'm going to rely on to be the experts in certain things and not having it all on me. And so this idea that
Mm.
you're in it alone was something, or that it's cheating by having other people help as resources was something that I definitely had to, realize were myths and fears that I had to get over.
Mm. Did you find that working with those people then accelerated your process and helped you? Like, just yeah, especially if
Absolutely.
something goes wrong, you have somebody you can reach out to rather than feeling like you're on an island. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that yeah, that makes sense.
And the
That makes sense.
beauty, the beauty, Sue, you and I have met through, other a mastermind and everything. And everybody in
Yeah.
this community, there's always an exception, right? But everybody in this community wants to help and pay it forward. I think the only
Mhm.
thing that I found that people hold close, close to their chest is a good contractor's contact information, which I don't mind. I totally understand. But besides that, everybody is pretty willing to share just about anything and everything and, help everybody along. I think that's the wonderful thing about this community is that it's a mindset of abundance.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoy it too. I mean, it just even just being surrounded by like-minded people is definitely helpful when especially when you're just getting started and you're just not quite sure where you have to go. And not only that, the accountability piece as well is always helpful because when you put yourself in a position where you're around other people and then you say you're going to do something and you said it in front of somebody else,
Right?
you're more likely to go ahead and do it rather than just saying it to yourself and, nobody hears it and it's like, "Oh, well, if it doesn't get done, then it doesn't get done." You know?
Exactly. Exactly, right? Especially when you're surrounded by people that you respect and want them to respect you, right? You
Right,
want to follow
right.
up on what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. So, you've built this great you've done all these really cool things these last couple of years. What has been your underlying passion that's been produced from what you've learned and what you've done?
I think my underlying passion is being able to provide not only myself, but my parents certain luxuries that I hadn't been able to before. Right? I've learned that for me, wealth is time and freedom. And having the time and freedom to travel with them and help pay for some of those expenses has really driven my passion because I think at the end of the day, we all do this ultimately to be able to impact the lives of our loved ones or our kids. And so for me, seeing that by having, a period of grinding for a little bit, taking some chances, but once you put the system and processes in place, you can really sit back and enjoy the fruits of your benefits. The more I did that, the more I was passionate about A, doing this for myself, and B, I'm one of those people kind of like, they always make jokes about people that, join CrossFit. Like I just want to tell everybody, hey, I do real estate. You should do it too. It's going to change your life. So I think
Wow.
that's been another passion of just making sure other people know this opportunity is there for them.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure you have a lot of opportunity to interact with people. What's your first response when you hear someone say to you, "Well, you did that. I don't think I could do that." Where do you usually go when somebody says that to you?
Yeah, I think the first is to understand what is driving that fear. Is it that they think that real estate is risky, right? The news tends to only focus on the bad. We hear people losing their fortunes in real estate and people forget that there's a lot of factors and situations sort of leading up to that and those are, one-offs but we've been sort of ingrained as we grow up to believe that investing in real estate is risky. And so digging in to see if, okay, is that their first sort of understanding? And then people don't always have a full understanding of all of the sort of levers and factors that go into it. You hear high interest rate and people just assume, okay, that means there's no such thing as a good deal. And people don't always have an understanding of all the different variables and how a good deal and what makes a good deal lays out. And so sometimes even just sitting down, and a lot of people are visual, right? And so writing out, here's an interest rate and the price and the rehab and what you can get, and doing the math equation
Mhm.
really takes out any emotion and makes it very like rational. There's numbers, most
Yeah, that makes
people, it's hard
sense.
to argue with an equation. So,
True. Yeah, it's true. It's
just visually
concrete.
showing. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's concrete. Yeah. I mean, that I guess, you know what, you're right. It's just asking that question of why do you feel that way? Like, what's the why behind why you're not doing that thing? And you know what? It's true for anything, not just real estate, right? So it's
Yeah,
like whatever we're stuck at in life, we always have to ask ourselves that question, why am I stuck here? And what's the driver that's going on behind it? And I think that's always an important question for us to ask
exactly.
ourselves, you know?
And so
So
many
it
people, I was just gonna say, so many people also say money, right? I don't have the money to do it. And I like to remind people, there's three aspects to getting a deal done. One, the money, but then having a good deal and having the time and knowledge. And I didn't believe my mentor when he first said this, but I've learned if you can find a good deal,
Mhm.
people will line up to give you the money and the time and the sweat equity because there is more money and more time than there are good deals. So I always like to
Mm.
say, the best thing you can do is teach yourself how to find a good deal and the other two parts will come.
That's some good advice. That's kind of
Thank
cool.
you.
So, as I was poking around and learning a little bit more about you, you have something called the Millionaires March. And I really would love to have you talk about that, talk about your creation of it, why it's there, who it's for, and anything else you want to throw in there.
Yeah, so the Millionaires March, like I mentioned, my passion really grew towards helping other people. And so along the way, I had started a syndication hedge fund company called G6 Capital, where we were doing fundraising for syndications in short term rentals. And being new and going to friends and family, we were able to offer it to people. Typically, going into a syndication can have anywhere, from 100 to $250,000 entrance fee, which really automatically makes it very unattainable for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, you have to be an accredited investor for some of those too, as well,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
or you have to have $100,000 sitting in the bank,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, minimum, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And know people because these aren't usually advertised necessarily publicly. You have to, know or have
correct.
access often. And I, reconnected with a lot of people and realized, there was a lot of women in my network that were, newly single mothers or, on a single income family. And they did not really have the knowledge, time, or the ability to go join a syndication like that. But the flip side was they weren't going to be able to necessarily go out and teach themselves and learn how to do this on the other hand. And so my idea with the Millionaires March was to make it quick, simple, and easy and financially not an obstacle for women to go out and just get that first real estate investment property or maybe your second one if you're looking to grow and just really kind of like taking that big problem of how do I get to financial independence and breaking it down into let's just take that first step, right?
Mhm,
So it's not so daunting, and how can we do that quickly, effectively, and in a cost efficient way. So I started off really focused on wanting to help other women because I also think it's in our nature to be a little bit more risk adverse. But
yeah.
ironically, the more I've done podcasts and networked and everything, 50-50 of my students are females and males.
Oh,
So
wow.
I love it. The men sometimes say, oh, is it okay if I'm reaching out to, so I need to update the website because anybody that is excited or has the passion, I'm happy to work for. I just initially found that, I think some of us women aren't taught to take risks in the same way that maybe is
Mhm.
comes natural to men or certain careers that maybe have been more male dominated where that's more reasonable to go out and do.
Yeah. Do you find that with some women, they also have this feeling like they can't take the initiative or they're not empowered enough to be able to purchase real estate on their own or go ahead and do something and take an initiative that might be seen as quote unquote like something guys would do instead of a girl? Do you find like there's that kind of mentality that you have to deal with too?
Yeah, I think thankfully, thanks to, I'm not huge social media fan, but I think, more and more women are seeing others do it. I think it's often that I don't have the time, I've got kids, I don't have the money because that tends to both responsibility tend to fall on women more so than the men in ways, at least especially with the kids and finding the time and managing a household. And then there is, yes, absolute that fear of, well, talking to a contractor, I'm a woman, he's gonna, try and take advantage of me. Right.
Yeah.
And there's, probably absolutely is that. But I think learning to be confident and that you have a seat at the table really comes across when you're dealing with people and men on the other side of the table. And in general, I have found that my men peers have treated me as equally well as my female counterparts. So sometimes I think it's, more in our head that we think,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, but that is something definitely to work through with many people.
Yeah. Now, is there a coaching component to what you do? I'm pretty sure there
Yeah,
is, yes?
exactly.
Yeah.
So the Millionaires
Yeah.
March is an hourly coaching program. I had first started it off with more of a cookie cutter. Okay, here's an 8-week program. And I realized everybody's different, right? Somebody may own their primary home, so they understand what an escrow is and what the closing documents are. And so they don't need, 2 or 3 lessons of a course that they're spending money for on that. Whereas somebody may have absolutely zero experience with ever purchasing property. And so they do need, a couple lessons to dive into what does that look like in that process. And so what I've found and shifted my model towards is that one-on-one personalized coaching for what exactly that student needs. So I sit down, have the, initial call just saying, where are you at? What are we working with? What are your goals? And then together we map out what the one-on-one sessions are then going to cover. And, it's life. There's always a map. And then you come along and you say, okay, we're going to head this direction or that direction. And some students want more hands-on. Some students, want to do certain things as homework and not spend time during a session together doing it. And so it's really great. I enjoy it too, because it means every journey with each student is a little different.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it sounds like, that you're making it to who the person is, not necessarily a cookie cutter that do this, do this, do this, do this, but there is a framework. I mean, real estate in general does have a framework. I mean, there are things that you do have to go through in order to get from point A to point B, but I really like that. I really like that approach that you have. What's one thing that you thought would be hard about the last couple years in building the real estate that you have and building out the Millionaires March, that the one thing that you thought would be hard, but really turned out wasn't? And then flip it. What did you think would be easy and then wound up being more challenging?
Yeah. So I think that finding when you first get started, it feels like finding a good deal is mission impossible. Right. And so when you find one that's maybe even halfway decent, you're so desperate to get it, you want to make it work, or, just kind of feel defeated because you spend an afternoon looking and you don't find anything. And then the more you get networked in, the more you know where to work, the more how to identify deals quicker and faster. You're going to almost have more than you can even take down, but it takes a little while to get there, and you get momentum and get networked in. And so I think that was something that I thought was going to be really hard, and now it's almost more okay. I've got to, slow it down and figure out I need more time, right, to manage and
Yeah.
do all the deals. On the flip side, I thought that keeping everything financially organized and the accounting would be pretty straightforward and something that I could do on my own. And very quickly, I realized, once you scale past 10 doors, you definitely need some sort of assistance, whether it's a virtual assistant, which, are my lifesavers, or, with our syndication company, we ended up bringing on basically a full-time accountant because things do get much more complicated. And
Mm,
big aspect of the benefits of real estate is the tax benefits and the write-offs. And so you want to
yeah.
make sure that you're capturing all of that and doing it correctly to be
Yeah.
able to
Well,
realize all of it.
scaling up like that, and then you need more people. That's actually a good problem to have.
It is.
Because
It
I
is.
mean, people look at it sometimes like, "Oh, no, I gotta hire this person. I have to hire this person. I have to hire this person." But if you flip it around, it's you have to hire them because you're having good growth and you need that extra help. So it's really a positive, not a negative thing. I think maybe the negative comes out of trying to find the right person for the right job, to fill that position. But the fact that you have to find somebody in the first place is actually a good thing, to
Totally.
begin with. So,
Spot on.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. If you could go back to I'm curious, if you could go back to your younger self and deliver a message, what would you tell your younger you?
Oh man, I would say make your money work for you. I would go back and read the book Killing Sacred Cows, which is about, some people, in my mind, the truth about 401ks and retirement funds, and how we have they're new, right? And so we really have yet to see them work and carry
Mm,
through a generation. And we're just taught this is what you do. This is how you save for retirement. And I had just so single-mindedly focused on that I had never thought about making my money work for me. And I never thought it was something I would do. It's what the men did in the finance firms that I worked for. And if I had started that, even in my late 20s versus my late 30s, man, I would be so far ahead.
yeah. Well, if you have time on your side and you have compounding interest, then it doesn't take much in the beginning. And the problem is that a lot of people, first of all, don't understand the math behind it that it grows exponentially, which is on a curve, not on a line. And not only that, a lot of the kids, like in their 20s, they're just coming out of college, they're strapped with student debt, and then, hey, I'm free. Let me go spend my paycheck on everything. And then they go into debt more and they don't understand that, wait a minute, if you just put a certain amount aside and then you fix it and forget it, it's going to do something. But I hear you on the 401ks and the that is a conversation for another time because there's a lot out there between should you do the 401k, should you just do the real estate? So I think everybody's circumstance is different, but and actually at that book, I have never heard of that.
Yeah, it's
Never
a
heard of that.
I did not love listening to the audio version of it so much, but if you want to read it or even just get a Cliff Notes, highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah. What was the biggest takeaway from that book?
I think the biggest takeaway was just the shock that, what do you mean these vehicles that were automatically signed up for by some of our employers and is, sort of touted, at least the way I took it as, a surefire thing to be prepared for retirement is new. I didn't realize that it was something that,
Oh,
was kind of my generation. Your generation was some of the first ones to
yeah.
buy into this, and that, the people running it and managing it really aren't any more knowledgeable in some ways than I am.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I'm kind of a little bit older, so I'm in that transition zone between the traditional pension and the 401ks. So when we started way back in, I would say mid 90s, that you still had pension systems were still kind of around, but as you went through each decade, they just disappeared.
Yeah.
I think teachers, well, I deal in that space. So teachers still have pensions, but they played around with them and they're not as straightforward as they used to be in the old systems. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard. It's kind of scary in a way. I think that you realize that you need a certain amount of money in order to replace your income when you get older. And it makes me think of that Warren Buffett quote, "You need to learn how to create things that make money while you sleep, or else you're going to be working until the day you die." I think
Yep.
that was one of the scariest I don't know if I wanna use the word scariest, but it was a shocking statement to me when I heard that for the first time. It's like, "Oh my god, if I don't do something that's making money while I'm sleeping, I'm gonna work till I die." Well, I don't
And
wanna
it's so
work till I
true.
die, so I guess I better figure something out. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah.
absolutely.
Wow, wow. What's one important truth do very people agree with you on? Very few people agree with you on.
I think that diversification when you get started is very important. And I had several mentors really say, you're doing this all wrong. You're just spraying and you've got no focus and this is going to,
Mm,
turn out terrible, because I was going into different markets almost immediately. And, sort of the mindset of a lot of investors. And again, the beauty of real estate is there's no one right way to do it, right? And so a lot of people have really narrowed down. They know a market block by block. They know this house, and that's great, right? But say that market goes up literally in smoke. There's a fire, or one of the biggest
yeah.
employers leaves, or heaven forbid, a natural disaster. All of your eggs are literally in one basket,
Yeah,
right?
though
And
that makes
especially,
sense.
yeah, especially if you're doing short-term rental or this or that. And so I sort of just said, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. And thankfully I did, because, some markets that I've pivoted into have been extreme home runs. And if I had just stayed in my little, niche, that market's actually kind of going downhill a little bit, or, is great for some things, but not one that really would have let me expand to the point that I'm at now. And so
Mhm,
a lot of people really, really disagreed with me on, going into multiple markets almost from the beginning.
mhm. I would imagine in what you do have your own it has its own set of challenges, real estate does, whether and I'm sure it pours over personally to you too. What's your approach to facing challenges when they come your way?
I think something you have to remember is real estate over the long haul is forgiving, right? So take a deep breath. Is this life or death? Money can, be made. It may be painful, but there's always ways. And I think just, making sure that I'm not only doing real estate. I went through a period of time. So making sure that I'm still taking care of my body and my mind, exercising, staying social, having conversations with people that are it isn't just about real estate, right? Because sometimes we can get so wrapped up, allows you to stay calm, cool, and collected. And then my other thing is, again, sometimes it feels like cheating, reaching out and asking people for help or from advice. But when I broke down and I did that and I reached out to some, mentors that have so many more years experience, having somebody look at it from an outside view, it's amazing how you're like, why didn't I see that? It was so simple. It was right there. And I think we've all probably done that when friends have come to us for advice and we're like, common sense, XYZ. But when you're in
Yeah.
it, you don't always see it. And
Oh,
so
100%.
having that, that Rolodex, that speed dial of who can I call to talk it out with in those, crises situations has really paid off in dividends.
Yeah, I've heard it called your board of directors.
Yes.
Have
Oh, I
that
like that.
board of dir yeah, I do. Yeah. You know who Chrissy Meyer? She's a friend of mine. I don't know if you know her or not. Anyway, she's in GoBundance Women also, and she was saying, she said, "Yeah, have a board of directors. Have those people in your back pocket that you can call on for certain things. If the poop hits if hits the fan in this particular area, you can call on this person and they'll come and help you out." So it's always
Exactly.
important to surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up and help you when you need it. I think that's really important. And we can often feel like we're sitting on an island, and it's not, it doesn't have to be that way.
No, no.
No, it doesn't have to be that way. So what are some you talked about daily habits. We talked a little bit about we've talked a lot about real estate too. What are some other areas that you would like to pursue now that you've built this base where you're at, now that you get to do the things you want to do as opposed to things that you had to do? What's next for Lindsay?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed about real estate investing is connecting with people, helping with people, right? Was my motivation for the Millionaires March. And one of the newer segments that we've started to get into are opening sober living homes for those dealing with addiction or eating disorders or mental health issues. And that has been very time consuming, but very rewarding, and it is definitely like running several different mini businesses within in one house in terms of managing people and personalities and rules and regulations. But it's also been a great way to have a positive impact on the community. I think all too often we landlords get, you know negative press and negative reviews, and it's a nice way to be giving back and making a positive impact that you really can't do in other ways for that population.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I know quite a few other people who are in the sober living facility realm too. I would imagine there's a great sense of satisfaction knowing that you can help people in that capacity. Do you have any
Mhm.
stories to share from
Oh
that?
man, stories, good or bad.
Yeah, you pick.
Yeah,
One of
yeah.
each.
I think one of them today, actually, a young woman who came to us, she literally came to us from the hospital after giving birth because she's living in a sober living home where we allow family with the women, and they have come and they've been inspected it and they've said yes, this is safe. She, as of today, is getting custody back of her newborn, when up until for the past month and a half she's only had visitation rights. So I think knowing that things like that are happening because I'm willing to put in that extra effort and take a chance on some of these homes and some of these individuals, that's been really, really rewarding. Now, there's times where I'm getting calls in the middle of the night and so and so's stealing so and so's food and yelling and screaming match. Those aren't always, the best stories. We had somebody, want to set fire to one of the homes because he was mad. So, you're
Wow.
dealing with all sorts of personalities and situations. And so when I say it's, you really have to know what you're getting into. I mean it, but like I said, it can have its very rewarding moments.
Oh, that sounds great. As I want to be mindful of your time, we talked a little bit before, so I want to make sure I give you enough time to, for us to finish up. So, I have a question. So, what's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Yeah, great question, Sue. I think, a lot of people come to me and they say, it's too expensive to buy where I'm at, but I'm so scared to, not see the house. How did you do it? And I think, how do you build that long distance team that you can rely on? And I would say, the first step, that as long as it's successful, I've been able to go into a market. And if I can't pull off this first step, no matter how much I like the market, I haven't gone into the market. And that is finding a real estate savvy rock star real estate agent.
Mm,
And by finding that individual, vetting them in the correct way, and then using them to build out the rest of your team, your contractor, your property manager, a lender, etc., is how you can successfully do long distance real estate investing. And I think that's, an area that I often get asked. And that's been my sort of secret sort of formula in terms of how I've done it over and over in different markets.
yeah. Oh, that makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, any market, whether you're local or whether you're far away, I mean, the team is what makes or break your experience with real estate. In
Exactly.
general. I mean, if you don't have a
Exactly.
rock star team, that's where the stories come in at where people are like, "Oh, this went bad, this went south, this went south," and unfortunately, it's generally the contractor.
All too often.
Unfortunately, that's generally the story that you hear, but yeah, I mean, I think team is half the battle to make sure you have that team on your side. So as we kinda, like, wrap it up a little bit here, I ask my guests the same question all the time, and I love this question. What is one small step that someone can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
I would say mark a date on your calendar in 2 months from now that you are going to put an offer on a deal, on a house. So, that's your action line. And then you can start over the next couple of days. What are the steps that you need to take to get there? And break it down. I think by taking a big, maybe overwhelming goal of buying a place and breaking it down into baby steps and giving yourself an ample amount of time, 2 months. And it doesn't mean you have to close on it. It just means you're going to find a deal and you're going to put an offer in, which means you're going to find your team, right? And you're going to find your market. And that starts to give you all your little to do and checklists and how to get there. It's a lot less daunting than, okay, someday I'm going to go accomplish this.
I like setting a deadline for yourself. Even if it's not buying a property, you can take that great small step that you just mentioned and really apply it to anything. Put it on the
Hmm.
calendar. Give it a deadline. But
Yeah.
if anybody listening is curious about those next steps but aren't quite sure and say, "Gee, I wanna take you up on that to put an offer in 2 months from today." How can people reach out to you? And well, wait a minute, let me back up a minute. Is that something you would help somebody walk through? And then how can people reach
Yeah,
out to you?
absolutely. So that's what the Millionaires March, all is how to buy your first property in 90 days. So not only to put in that offer, but to close it. And so one of the things, like I've mentioned, I love connecting with people. And so if people want to just connect, take 30 minutes, see if I can help them, give them some insight. If you go to Millionaires March free strategy session, and I'm sure Sue, you'll be great and put that in the notes,
Absolutely.
grab some 30 minutes, we can connect. And if I'm able to help and you go on your way, absolutely love it, benefits me, makes my heart happy. And I'm happy to tell you a bit more if you wanted to continue to work through the hourly coaching that I've mentioned before. And you can also check out my website, themillionairesmarch.com.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, I'll put a plug in for mine, and you can also find Lindsay on personalcoachfinder.com too, because you are featured there
I
as
love that
well.
resource. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure to have you on there. It's my honor to have you on there, actually. I love that you not only built something for yourself, but you also want to give back and you want to take care of others and you want to pass it on. So I love that about your story. I'm very grateful for you. glad we got a chance to chat today and you got a chance to tell your story.
Yeah, Sue, so wonderful to be on here. Thank you for the wonderful, thought-provoking questions and the opportunity to have a chat with you. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. All righty. Well, Lindsay, until next time.
All right, take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.